How's everybody doing this afternoon? Let me try and tone that down a little, I think. I don't need to be using this booming thing I got as a voice that loud. I'm glad to see everybody here. I'm so proud to be here with these people and with y'all. Is everybody having a really positive experience with their Netroots Nation's host? Let me hear a round of applause. I think what's going on here is very great. Everybody from Netroots Nation has been wonderful to us, to you, I'm sure you have noticed, and they certainly have been wonderful to me. So I'm very happy that Netroots Nation has allowed this panel up here today. My name is Rodrigo. I host a radio show called I Take Liberty with My Coffee. I work in nonprofits. I work sometimes with Peachtree NORML. Actually, I work a lot with Peachtree NORML. Very people are here for Peachtree NORML, I see in the audience. Let me hear a round of applause for Peachtree. And I'm very happy to be your host today for this wonderful panel. And I want to introduce the fantastic panel, but first I want to tell you the name of this panel. It is Prohibition, Mass Incarceration, and Racism. How we can halt the prison pipeline for cannabis use. Now this is something that's near and dear to my heart, and I don't have the horror story to tell you about something that has happened in my life relative to prohibition for me personally, to my being. So, in a way, I think that does something in the overall conversation about prohibition. And that is, this is an important subject for everyone because it's about harm reduction in our community in every way possible. So in that aspect, it does personally impact me. And I tell a lot of people personally about the cannabis prohibition side of things that, number one, it isn't based in truth. It never has been from the standpoint of our government. For me, personally, the entire war on drugs is based upon propaganda, factually. It's not just me doing conspiracy theory. I mean, if you go back and read the newspapers, my mother was born in 1914. And one of the things that she did that was so wonderful in my personal education was she would save newspapers from different decades that she was alive. So I got to see the newspapers from the Depression, from the attack on Pearl Harbor, from D-Day. And the other things I got to see was Reefer Madness. I got to see the propaganda about, you know that one story where it says, don't let your white woman smoke pot because she's gonna sleep with the black guy down the street. Now you guys may have heard that before and dismissed it. That's real. That really happened. Just like there was people running campaigns in the 40s saying we need to put Japanese people in internment camps. That really happened. All you have to do is go back and look at history. So when I think of the cannabis prohibition thing, I look at how the government actually created this problem. So if you think about it, and I have nicknames for all our presidents, at least the ones in my lifetime. The Tricky Dickie's an easy one for me. When he started the latest, aspect of the cannabis prohibition movement and it was all about, and this is all documented, and this is all released now. It was about, we got to figure out a way to put our foot on the neck of the anti-war movement. Because we are very imperialistic in this country. We just like the war model. We have almost 1,000 military bases in the world. We don't want these hippies, these anti-war peace activists, having any kind of traction, getting any kind of... So let's just ruin them and put them in jail for cannabis. We don't want the civil rights movement to actually have an impact. So let's do cannabis prohibition and let's put black people in jail. I mean, these are documents now that are now released, because the government likes to wait 30 years before they tell us anything, except when it comes to Kennedy. They'll never tell us about that. But they want to wait 30 years before they tell us anything. Well, it's the next generation. Oh, I'm sorry, I was alive when this happened. So my connection is to this is more to my community, my neighbors. We all know someone in our communities who has been personally impacted by law enforcement and cannabis prohibition. Whether it's a friend, a family member, a neighbor, somebody down the street, the person that's at the candy store, whatever it is, we all know, if you just think about it, we all know it. We probably all know somebody too that might have been having chemotherapy and smoked a joint in order to get through the day because it battles nauseousness, which means cannabis has at least the medicinal value of Rolaids. right? Okay? So for me, that's the kind of connection it makes. Plus, I'm about human rights. Your rights. My rights. The ones I was born with. The ones that I should have. The ones that I'm supposed to be protected from government abuse. So I just wanted to share that with you as why I'm here, because the stories of these individuals are a little different than mine. Some of them are way more personal than mine, and I respect them all, and I want you all to hear them. So what I'm going to do in my introduction, instead of sitting here and continuing to run my mouth, I'm going to tell you who they are, and I would like them to introduce themselves to you as to what brought them to this panel. So I'm going to start with our filmmaker panelist, Ty Bayless, from the Young Turks and from Brave New Films, very much involved with Proposition 64 in California. Ty, tell us a little bit about yourself. Nice round of applause for Ty, of course.
My name is Ty. We, with Brave New Films, worked with the Drug Policy Alliance when they were introducing Prop 64, and we partnered with them making the video for Prop 64. So we kind of did the research and got the script to end Prohibition in California. They passed in November.
Fantastic. Next on our panel, my very good personal friend, I'm going to brag about that. I do it all the time because it's worth bragging about. So she's worth bragging about. She's the founder and the original executive director of Peachtree, NORML, Sharon.
Thank you, Bobby, and thanks for moderating this panel for us. My name is Sharon Ravert. I'm a 52-year-old Georgia, well, actually Atlanta native, and I got involved when a SWAT team came in and took my kid away at 19 years old. She was facing 26 years for 1.5 grams of marijuana. We just happened to have a couple things in the house that you shouldn't have if you have a joint. So that's how I got involved, and I'm glad to be here at Netroots, and thanks for all coming out, and hopefully we'll have a great conversation today.
Next on the panel, and I would think most of you at least would recognize this gentleman, is a law enforcement professional. He is the founder, executive director, along with some others, of the Law Enforcement Action Committee, Mr. Neill Franklin.
Well, I hope if you do recognize me, it's not because I locked you up before. I don't think that's the case. I don't see any familiar faces. But Bobby, that's a different story for you, my man. So my name is Neill Franklin, the executive director of LEAP, the Law Enforcement Action Partnership. And 34 years of policing in the state of Maryland, and finally drugs in its totality. Bobby, as you said, it was race-based, class-based. As a matter of fact, the foundation of incarceration, today's incarceration, and racism in this country sits squarely upon our prohibition policy. So here I am. I come from a place of making thousands of arrests, or being involved in thousands of arrests, mainly for drug crimes and others, and now I'm an advocate to change that landscape. So thanks, Sharon, for the invitation, and look forward to the discussion.
And of course, over here on the panel is the director of the National Women's Alliance for National NORML, Ms. Ebony.
Thank you, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here. Much like Bobby, I don't have a horror story about cannabis or weed, whatever you want to call it. I just happened to be looking for something to do one day and was scrolling online and saw a meeting for NORML, and I never knew that there was an order. I spent 17 years in Vidalia, Georgia. Anybody heard of Vidalia? Okay, yeah. So I never knew that there were people who actually wanted to legalize marijuana, and I'm just like, oh shit. So I go to this meeting, and I'm thinking that there are going to be a lot of black people there, and come to find out there were a lot of white lawyers. And so I stayed, and then I came back the next time, and then a lot of people were like, well, Ebony, why won't more black people get involved? And so I've just been involved ever since.
You're black.
I'm black. And my dad's a black man, so my parents are preachers. So it's in my blood to fight for other people, like even if that doesn't affect me. So I fight.
So we have some fantastic ground to cover by some people, obviously some fantastic people who know what they're talking about. As do more than likely everybody in the room. And for those who don't know, we are so happy to try and educate you. And I want to start with Ty. I actually have not known Ty that long. We were just getting to know each other, but he shared with me some personal experiences that he has witnessed himself about cannabis prohibition. And Ty, I wanted to ask you about that first. Can you share with the little people what really drives you and what you've seen in your community and in your life that brought you here?
I guess what we were speaking about yesterday was my cousin back in, I want to say maybe 2001. He got arrested for it was a federal offense because he sent weed, marijuana. I think it was about 2 pounds to Illinois, and so they caught it, sent it back. As soon as he accepted it, they busted the door down, and they offered him like 15 years for a plea bargain. He didn't plead. He tried to fight it and ended up getting 72 years. Yeah, 72 years, and in 2009. He had a stroke and died while he was in jail. So that kind of drives my passion. And a lot when I was younger, it's a little different with the juvenile system, But I got caught in the same situation where I got intent to sell because they caught it. They caught me with weed and it was bagged up, and so I was charged for that. But one of the things that we were kind of dealing with when we were doing the film for promotional video for Prop 64 was trying to get older black women and Hispanic women to be a part of it. And you kind of reminded me of this when you were talking about how when you first went to NORML, it was like, why aren't the black people there? And it's because we found, I figured because our parents, how they see marijuana, because we've been the only people that's been criminalized for marijuana. So they have a negative connotation to it versus white people. It's not, they're not as, we use it in the same rate, but black people are 4 times more likely to be arrested for it. And I think Hispanics are almost 2 times more likely to be arrested in California for marijuana. And that's kind of like the reason why it's hard for them to see past their children going to jail. It's not a good thing to them, And so that was one of the things we were trying to get around. Like how do we appeal to that demographic?
And Sharon, you had mentioned about the SWAT raid on your house. And of course, I know your daughter, and I've learned so much about that. For you, in your personal journey, what stands out? Even chronologically, if you just give us some idea, without getting too deep into it, because I know this, of course, is your life, what stands out for you most as to what makes you mad, I guess? What's the thing that makes you really want to fight this more than anything else from learning that experience?
The children, our future. I don't do this for me. I'm not a criminal. I smoke pot whenever I want to. I live in Georgia. But I don't consider myself a criminal. But as most of you can gather from the name of this panel, they're not looking for me. That's why I fight. It's not for me. It's for the future of our children. They have taken away communities. They've taken away parents. They've taken away children. They have destroyed an entire generation. The drug war and cannabis prohibition is an ugly beast. And if I don't stand up for them, when one day they do come for me, who the hell's going to stand up for me? So that's why I do it. It's not for me. It's for them.
That's fantastic. It's so true. It's almost like our government's behavior is. I personally don't want to be here. I want to be on the lake. But they're kind of giving us no choice. We kind of need to do this, continue this stuff. So Neill, Sharon just mentioned something that you can actually shed some light on from the other side in your education. You mentioned some of it earlier, but this is something, of course, that you experienced a lot from the opposite side. So talk a little bit about what you saw in that regard.
From the other side, let me first say that it was education that got me to this place of really understanding the drug war and its failure as it relates, well, I hate using that, failure because it was never really a clear plan to deal with drug abuse or addiction or anything like it. That was all false, okay, so. But in policing, we're taught to believe that, in fighting this war on drugs, and mainly in this area of cannabis, that it's for the good of society, right? Drugs are bad, the whole DARE program that I'm sure probably some of you have gone through in school, and this is a policing community, which is a very closed society, and the war on drugs has led to a lot of that closed society within policing. We train police officers very well. I mean, we train them very well as to how to go about, enforcing laws, locking people up, doing paperwork, all that good stuff. But we don't educate them well. So it took education for me to get to this transition in my life, transitioning from what we do in policing to this place of advocating for an end to these policies. And one of the things that we have to understand in policing as it relates to cannabis prohibition is that this is a cornerstone to ending the war on drugs. Cannabis is. And for a number of reasons. Number one, it's whether you're on the side of, whether you're members of the cartel, whether you're cops, whether you're somewhere else in this, it's the number one moneymaker. In policing, it brings more money into policing than just about anything else because of civil asset forfeiture policies. Civil forfeiture is another conversation. If you don't know what it is, look it up. I'm sure you'll hate it. If you're not already a victim of it, you hate it. So until we get to a place of educating police officers as to the history of these policies and other policies that are problematic for police and communities and uniting the two, are just supposed to be a small segment of the community, not something you have to build a bridge to or from. And the war on drugs keeps us separated. We just have to find a place, find a space to do broad, in-depth education for police. And that's why I do this work. That's why I became the executive director of LEAP, so that we can push this education, not just out to the community from a law enforcement perspective of reform, but push it out to the policing community of what education in this space should look like, and why we shouldn't be, as police, why we shouldn't be engaged in fighting the war on drugs at any level. For the most part, this is a health issue. This is a issue between people, their parents, their kids, communities, their close communities, and so on. But not one for police. Let us deal with people committing murders and rapes and robberies and crimes against our kids. How about let's go find the thousands of missing kids that we have out here today. Let's spend our resources there. And it takes education to get our cops to that point.
Fantastic. Before I go to Ebony, I got to highlight something because there's a lot of discussions, and you and I talked about this just the other day. Neill started this not when he was retired. And I wanted to say that because I don't think a lot of people know that or understand that, because we want to connect with the police that are policing now. Well, that's where this and him came from. He's retired now, but he was not retired when this all started. And I think that's very important, and I think he should be applauded for that. Now Ebony. If you don't know, Ebony is also a comedian, and her father was a pimp. I think is the first line in her last time I saw her. She's really funny, so if you get a chance to see it, you got to see it. I had to do that. But head of the National Women's Alliance for NORML. For me, I mean, we were touching upon, Sharon was talking about with children, and Ty was talking about having the women coming into it because they're your mothers. You're a mother. You're trying to protect your children too. But what are the challenges, to elaborate more on what Ty is talking about, what are the challenges that you see, not in talking to the women, but in having women make changes? Because if there's ever anybody that has been impacted besides the actual person, it's moms and sisters and wives.
Well, a lot of the women that I interact with, there aren't really any challenges to them wanting to make changes because they're so hungry for change. A lot of women are tired of the shit. We're tired of our children being criminalized. We're tired of our husbands being taken away, our boyfriends, whatever. We're just tired of it. So women, I'm not really, it's just going back to what Neil Franklin said, is education. So once women are educated, they are just ready. They're like, let's go change the world. Like, why hasn't this changed yet? Like, what do I need to do? So, but I would like to speak of what makes me keep going. What you said is what makes me keep going. Like, it makes me angry, because I don't have a story like, oh, well, my dad did years in jail. Like, 72 years is ridiculous. I'm a mother of 6, and if 1 in 3 children will be locked up for weed, well, mine kind of don't care about weed because I smoke so much. They're like, yeah. But if 1 in 3 children are locked up for cannabis, then that means that 2 of my children could be imprisoned for a flower, for a plant, for something that I just came from Colorado. There were factories full of weed. I mean, there are people in the industry who are making millions, but yet there are still people who are in prison for it.
It's so true, so true. So we touched a little bit about Prohibition. Let's get into a little bit about the racism. We'll jump mass incarceration because I think we might want to do racism first, because mass incarceration is kind of the result of it. So Ty, in your life and in your advocacy and in your filmmaking, because you do so many marvelous things, give us a sense, and you're also a black man. Now I hate the term that makes you a minority. What the hell does that mean? You're a man, red blood, I believe in bring one to the planet, we'll talk, right? But for the rest of these knuckleheads, I gotta be civil, so I ain't gonna say nothing more than that.
I'll say it.
Okay, well, we're gonna give her a shot, right? Okay, I told you. I told you. So Ty, talk a little bit about what you see day in and day out on the racism side, how you're dealing with that, and how it interacts with your support of the anti-prohibition movement.
I kind of want to, this kind of goes with the question but asked Neill.
You're allowed to ignore me, trust me. You're allowed to ignore me and talk. You guys have total contact. I don't care if you ignore me, it's okay.
I want to like kind of understand what education looks like when you talk about educating, police officers and things like that. I'm wondering, what does that look like, and how do they get past their kind of stereotype of blacks and Hispanics when it comes to anything? Like, how do they actually, because if it's in my experience, if it's law, that's what it is, period, point blank. They can't see past that. And when you put kind of a stereotype to a certain group of people because they're black or they're Hispanic. That's all they can see. So what type of education to help? Because when you said it, I didn't get it. I don't.
What type of deprogramming?
Yeah.
So let
See,
me.
it's a better question, don't you think?
I know exactly what you mean, Ty, and I can answer that real quick. Even before you get to that, we got to do a better job at hiring the right people. So, and it's a whole other conversation too. Who we're hiring to work in what neighborhoods and communities. But once you get them into the academy, and this is an example real quick of what we did in Baltimore for a couple of years, where we had some federal dollars to support this, but we developed a training academy called Police Corps, where we brought trainees into a 6-month live-in academy, and part of that, the education part of this program was getting these trainees out into the community, strapping aprons on them and having them feed the homeless. The history of racism in this country. And I'm talking about some deep, what cops were really about in this country, 100 years ago, that type of education. True education about the war on drugs. And, having them work for a week with some of our unfortunate boys who were incarcerated, sending them to the institution and working with these kids for a week, developing relationships with them, and doing other things in the community as well. So it's not just sitting in education through a book. No, this is going out into the community and educating yourselves about the community. And when I look back at those officers that came through this program who were in the Baltimore Police Department, you definitely see the difference between them and the police officers that went through the regular academy. But as with all good pieces of work, you know what? The funding goes away mysteriously.
No, because that's to me, I feel like only people that should police certain areas if they live there, because that's the only way that they're going to see the people as people. You know what I mean? Especially in LA, there you have cops that live 20 miles away, 30 miles away. And we all know the history. Like they ship Ku Klux Klan members into LA to become police officers. So to me, it's always better to police your own neighborhood, because then you give a fuck about the people. You care about them. You know what I'm saying? Your son and his son goes to school.
Let's take a little bit further than that, right? Because public safety is first and foremost a community responsibility. And if we do it right, we don't need police. So that's what I was saying about, we're not supposed to be separate in any kind of way. Those who police our community are the ones that the community should say, we want you to help us deal with the people who are violent towards one another or towards other people. And that's why I think that we should have a concerted effort across this country to move toward civilian-led policing. It's another conversation, but in short, it's about the community governing those who provide these services of policing within the community. So,
that opened up something.
You're right, Ty, man. I'm with you. For sure.
That reminded me of something. So how many people in this room are from the Atlanta area? The majority of the room. Okay, so I want to, because that just opened up a door to something that just happened when you talk about political leadership. And I see some of the people that are in the audience as well were involved in this. So Sharon was on the front lines along with a number of other people in pushing a decriminalization bill in Fulton County. And first I'll say, everyone that is in the Atlanta area, get on board and push them, because they made every kind of an excuse possible. And I heard them. I actually wasn't there physically the last time, but I was filming it, and so was this young man right here. And the excuses that were being made in order to table this bill, was just beyond ridiculous, of course. And I want Sharon and Ebony, who I know is also involved in it. So Sharon, you first talk a little bit about some of the challenges you met with the politicians, both on the education side and on changing policy to harm reduction in that situation.
Every step we take is a challenge in the South. They're hunting us down. They're making a shit ton of money on it, and they want to ruin people. That's the way I see it. It may be a distorted look, but I've lived in Atlanta my whole life. And we had problems in the 80s and in the 70s, but nothing like we have now. I look at the police and I think they've done this to themselves. I look at the lawmakers and I think they've done this to us and the police. They have pitted us against each other. So when I go down, what I try to do is bring that message to them. We have the law enforcement that comes out and fights us. We've got the GBI there. We've got the prosecuting attorney's office. We're just asking simply to heal ourselves with that plant. We're asking not to be thrown in a cage for a plant. And they come out, and it's frustrating. But I'll tell you something. We've been down there working for 5 years, and this is a marathon, not a sprint. And we have to make coalitions with people like LEAP, NORML Women's Alliance, the ACLU, NAACP, and that's what we do. We try and raise our voices and amplify other people's voices, and it's beginning to work. It's a slow, tedious tight wire that we walk every day. But when we're talking, we're winning, and we just need to raise our voices. For those of you that are in the Atlanta area or Georgia, please. This is something that we've got to do, because as we build this community, this state, and the country to end prohibition, this is only the first step. We're bringing together people from all different demographics, people that have been affected, people that love drugs, people that hate drugs. There's a guy named Ethan Nadelman with DPA that says this all the time. And people that just don't give a shit about drugs, right? But we've all got to come together to do this. And so that's what we're trying to do. And it's important for your voice to be heard. Write op-eds. Call your legislators. I know it sounds hokey, but it works. And we're not going to stop until we protect everybody, because until everybody's free, nobody's free.
Excellent. Ebony, I know that you were involved in that recent fight as well, so give me your perspective on that battle in Atlanta.
Okay. I actually, Sharon prayed me to Atlanta back in like the end of 2012. And wow. The biggest issue that I've experienced in the South is obviously religion. It's the Bible Belt. There are a lot of old mindsets, and I've been saying it since 2012, and I'm still saying it, and I'll go to the Capitol and say it tomorrow or tonight. It's time for the good old boys to go home. It's time for them to go home, and it's time for people who actually have compassion and education and who care and who give a damn about the citizens and about the people to do their job. And it's time for us as the people, we as the people, to put them in their place, because we are the ones who are paying them. We are the ones who put them into office, or they just got there by osmosis or by their money, and it's time for them to get out. I oftentimes like to say they can get Sharon, the sweet Southern belle, or they can get me. And so they're
not a sweet Southern belle, is that what you're saying?
Not so much. Not so much.
You said something about Vidalia, I don't know.
Yeah, Vidalia, I'm a preacher's kid. God, clap, I'm a preacher's kid. I'm reformed. All right, exactly, but I made it out. So I'm a preacher's kid. And one of the things that I've noticed over the last 7 years of traveling with NORML and with the NORML Women's Alliance is the issue between, is it medical or is it recreational? Yeah, I don't have any issues that I can go to the doctor and say, hey, give me a prescription or a recommendation for medicinal cannabis. I have 6 children, as I said before. That's number one. I can smoke if I want to. I'm from New Jersey. I used to live in Trenton, New Jersey. Like I say, anybody from Trenton should be able to smoke. Like if you ever been to Trenton or if you ever been to the SWATs, you should be able to roll one up. Because it's just the way life life is. Now, being a black woman, I have seen that if you're on Medicaid, you're also not going to get a prescription or a recommendation. You can get a recommendation, but that doesn't mean that you're going to take that Medicaid card down there and get any cannabis. So I just see that that is another form of racism, another form of keeping people in a certain place where they are not having access to what other people have access to. And that's a huge struggle. And for people to not really see the issue in it, to not really see the worth in it, like you don't have to be a cannabis advocate to say, okay, well, if it works for you, then it works for you. That's right.
And that's the non-Southern Belle Trenton approach to that. Isn't that nice? So she just said something, you know, and I am, again, I'm the same, you know, hemp, adult use, whatever. I hate labels anyway. That's why I like they say, what party are you? I hate everybody. I don't want any party. What the hell are you a party for? But Ebony mentioned something that I have to highlight to tell you the absurdity of our government approach to cannabis prohibition. We now have, I hate illegal too, but we now have medical marijuana allowed in what, 29 jurisdictions, I believe the number is right now, or 30. See, this is why he's around. See, I love smart people. See, that's right. Hey, I defer. And besides, if he was wrong, I'd still want it to be 30. So we're going to say it's 30 anyway. But Ebony just highlighted the absurdity. She said, well, when I get a prescription, I mean a recommendation. That's not a minor statement in this issue. Let's talk. Sharon mentioned Colorado. And I want everybody to weigh in on this. Sharon mentioned Colorado. They don't give prescriptions for cannabis, even though it is allowed to be for medical use and other uses. Like, we use Colorado, so they got uses all over the place, right? But you don't get a prescription. It's not inundated as a medical policy. It's only taught in 13% of the medical teaching facilities in this country anything about the endocannabinoid system. That's not cannabis. That's what I have, you have inside of your system. It's an integral part of our bodies. And it's only taught in 13% of the medical establishments. And I have to ask you, and again, I'm not trying to separate anything. This is just the whole totality of our problems here. Talk about that absurdity that you can only get a recommendation, because in Georgia here, we've got medical access, right? Yeah, except we got to put it on Amtrak, you know, and he was just talking about 72 years. I'm sorry, I'm not doing cross lines for shit. They ain't happening. So talk about the absurdity of the way the approach is for the medicinal side. Ty, I'll drop that on your lap first.
I'll drop it on her lap.
Sharon, Ebony, go right ahead. You got 6 kids, so you can talk about anything with rolling your own. You already made that clear.
Okay, wait, stop. Because I have an endocannabinoid system and it does help me to forget things. Repeat it for me.
She's baiting me. Okay, so the difference between the absurdity of going to a doctor in a state that has medical marijuana laws that allow it, and yet they still can't prescribe it. They give you a recommendation. They put you on a list so you can go get it. They don't give you a prescription. Talk about that absurdity.
I mean, it's just absurd because we should be able to grow our own. It's medicine, it's an herb, you should be able to grow your own. We do have, you know, a lot up north. I'm from New Jersey. We do have doctors who are giving recommendations, and we do have some who are getting over on people and charging them an exorbitant amount of money for recommendations. So it's really absurd, and a lot of people who are just now hearing that, oh, cannabis is medicine, and they're like opening up to it, they'll pay that money, or, you know, they'll just do whatever because they need it. I have parents who contact me like, my children need it, and even in states where it is legal and where people are able to get recommendations, those recommendations do not take them into a dispensary to get medicine. Those recommendations take them into circles. Those recommendations are red tape that really don't give them access, and maybe a small percentage of people are getting access, and the rest still have to buy black market. Don't have any problem with that. I love the black market. But just the absurdity of having a system that says, well, now we're going to allow you because this is medicine in this way. But these people still aren't able to get, it's not medicine for them, this is still a crime. So that's absurd to say this is medicine for you. Like everybody in California, this can be medicine. Even when we were in Colorado, there were recreational dispensaries and there were medicinal dispensaries. Okay? All weed is medical. Repeat after me. All cannabis is medicine.
Is medicine.
Okay, thank you, class. So, because all cannabis is medicine, even different strains, however you decide to use it, if it's a salve, if it's a wax or oil, it's still all medicine. So if you have to go through the red tape to get it, it's absurd.
Neill, please,
Call me if you need anything.
please chime in on this.
So,
I know she's hard to follow. I don't know what to tell you. I know.
as it relates to as it relates to people having access, let me just put it this way. I think there is a difference between, and I agree, all cannabis is medicine. However, we need a medical process here. And then when I say medical process, I'm not talking about laws and policies and all that stuff. I'm talking about research and development. I've been fortunate enough to interact with researchers from Israel who are way ahead of us on this issue. And they are to a point, and they just need others, hopefully here in the United States in the very near future, to be at a place of doing really good research and development. If we can get something like the Marijuana Justice Act passed, thank you, Cory Booker, for introducing it. But if we can get to a place on par in doing research and development, then they have studies that they can cross-relate. So the importance about these studies is that they will be able to pinpoint exactly what you need, what combination, how many CBDs, terpenes, and how this combination goes together for what particular ailment you have.
Exactly how it works.
And right now it's still somewhat of a crapshoot, but we know it works. But it'd be nice to really refine it. And as for the other side, as you said, labels, adult use market, of just wanting to grow one up and because you're from Trenton. Don't forget Camden either. You know?
Don't forget Camden.
Or Baltimore.
Don't forget Baltimore.
But, you know, yeah, you should be able to enjoy yourself. And for a lot of people, just enjoying yourself is medicinal.
Yes.
And hey, and I don't smoke. Yeah.
I got a bottle of scotch that says the same
It's
thing.
Leo season though.
Go ahead, Sharon.
There's been a few cops that that haven't smoked in a long time. I keep trying with Neill. It hasn't worked yet. One day.
Since 18, it's been a long time.
Right. No, I'm talking about together. I want to roll it, but you want to smoke it with me.
For my birthday.
Okay, that's good. That's right around the corner.
Not in Georgia, you won't get me smoking.
Come on, be a rebel.
I don't look like you.
That's why I love him. One of the many reasons. So, I guess we've all kind of figured out that everybody in the room or on this panel feels like all use is medicinal to some degree. You know, our government seems to be scared of the word euphoric, right? And it's like, well, why the hell aren't we? Why does our government not want us to be happy? Right? And then I hear well, it makes you lazy. So fine. When did becoming lazy, even if it did, when did becoming lazy become a crime that I need to be in jail for? So to wrap up the whole medical thing and maybe go straight into the mass incarceration part of this, I would say this. Again, until we're all free, no one's free. And our zip code in Georgia is the only thing that's making us a criminal. Because there's people all over this country that are using it for whatever damn reason they want to or need to. Just because their government decided that it was all right. Well, our government needs to make that change and make it quick and stop locking people up.
Yeah, we're going to go right into the mass incarceration thing, absolutely. So, a couple of years ago, I did some research and wrote an article. Criminal justice reform is near and dear to my heart from an advocacy standpoint. I've worked in the legal profession for a long time as well. And And I learned a few things. You know, sometimes bad things happen with good intentions. And in the 60s, when they were looking at disparities in sentencing, there was a commission done by LBJ, and it lasted a few years, and the purpose of the commission was to establish, to stop the disparity in sentencing. You know, judges would take black people, Hispanic people, poor people, and they would hammer them, and when the privilege came before them, they would give them different sentences. So, the civil rights people, regardless of the ideology politically, the civil rights people said, no, that's not going to work anymore. We need to stop it. So, what they did was they made determinate sentencing. This is at the federal level particularly. They went after determinate sentencing. That was the first thing before they got to all the three strike stuff. So now, when they did that, they took away parole. They took away the reformation model. And they said, okay, now if you get put in jail, you're going to be there. If you get a 5-year sentence, you're going to be there 4 of the years, and you're not going to have a chance of parole and all that other stuff is what the feds did. And the way they turned that into a bad thing was the prosecutors now and legislators now decided to make the sentences very severe for very minor things. And then they still applied the prosecutions in a disparate way. So they went from one problem they tried to change with good intentions, and they created a worse one. And one of the examples I offered to my panel here is the differences, the way they used to sentence people for crack cocaine as opposed to powder cocaine. They would take the same weights, but the black person would have the crack, let's say, of an ounce, and the white person would have the ounce of powder, and the white guy would get 4 years, and the black guy would get 25. And there wouldn't be any parole on the end of that. And in the cannabis world, as Ty was talking about, that happened 72 years. I wouldn't care how many pounds of pot the man was sending somewhere. What victim pulled up and said, I need this guy to get 72 years because he was mailing pot? But it was a black man. I'm assuming your cousin was black.
You know, oh, absolutely.
All right, just say. All right? So dive in there and just take it and run.
I think it has a lot to do with their scare tactics. You know, like I said, they offer them 15 years, but this is what they do. This is part of the overcriminalization and the packed jails is because they'll say, okay, look, you have, you know, they'll probably arrest you for one thing, and by the time you get your charges, they done added 4 more things. And you go through processing, and you finally go see a judge, or the public defender, he'll say, yeah, I talked to the DA, and look, if you plead guilty to this, we'll drop these 4 charges. They really don't mean nothing. They just give you more time. And then if not, you could get 75 years. They use that, and that's why a lot of people do these plea bargains and things like that. In Los Angeles, it was up to the police discretion on whether it was possession or an intent to sell. Now, if you have 2 different strains or 3 different strains, and you have those, and you're not mixing them together, they can say you have narcotics with intention, and that's a felony, right? And it's up to their discretion, which is absurd, but that's what happens, If you look at ways that we can help stop the overcriminalization of marijuana and just the pipeline is, if you look, Colorado, Washington, and DC, I think the arrest for weed possession went down over 80%. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like just by them passing laws and making marijuana legal. Now no one's being arrested. So I think legalizing this, it won't help the harassment. You know what I'm saying? You get put over because you're black. They just happen to find weed when they pull you over. You're gonna still get fucked with. But it won't fuck up your future. You put a felony on someone's record, they can't get a job. You know what I mean? They can't get a home. They can't get Section 8. It's a whole lot.
Take them out of society.
It stops your entire life. It dictates the rest of your life if you get a felony. So that's the good thing about it, that whatever, they may get pulled over and have to get out the car and get their car searched on some dumb shit, but they'll still have a life. They'll still have something to live for. You know what I mean?
Fantastic. Sharon?
Yeah, so to just put something out here, because we're never going to, I've been studying this for a long time, and we're never going to get there in an hour and 15 minutes. If you have Netflix, watch 13.
13. Yeah.
watch 13th to finish this off, because the 13th Amendment, when they abolished slavery, has this little thing right at the bottom that says, unless you're a criminal. Okay? We're all criminals. There's so many laws that our governments, local, state, and federal, have put us out there to abide by. We're all criminals, every single one of us. They may not pick me today, but they could if they wanted to. They can pick anybody they want to out of society. And those of you that are in this room are here because you're risk takers. You're standing up for whatever issue you're here to follow, and you're risk takers, and you're at risk. So stick together.
Neill? You're in a bad spot, man. I mean, you got to follow some really prime time conversations there.
I know, man. It's a tough spot to be in, but I'm good with
You
it.
got good shoulders, though. You got good shoulders.
I'm good with it. Ty, I agree with you, man. We definitely got to keep our eyes open for what's next. I mean, just think about what's happening with the war on terror, right? Another war, and what's next? And let me give you some education on what is potentially next. Right now, in the name of health, there's a big push across the country in many of our smaller jurisdictions, which go unnoticed from time to time. There's a big push to prohibit the sale of menthol tobacco products in black communities. Now, it sounds good. We want black folk not to smoke. I do. I don't want anyone catching lung cancer or anything close to that. And we know there's history behind it, the marketing of, menthol products to black communities. We get that from the tobacco companies. But the people who are trying to push this legislation aren't looking at the complete picture. First of all, of the tobacco products used by blacks in this country, 78% of those products are menthol. What happens in Oakland when we prohibit the sale from local stores and gas stations of menthol tobacco products? You think we just gonna say, okay, they ain't gonna smoke them no more?
Black people are going to want a Newport, let me tell you.
Right. Trunks are gonna be loaded up from the next state or the next county. U-Hauls are gonna be rented. And you know what? Even though it won't be illegal to smoke a menthol cigarette, we got to find out who's bringing these untaxed menthol tobacco products into these poor black neighborhoods, and we, the po-po, are going to be the ones charged with doing it. So what are we going to be doing? We're going to be stopping more people, we're going to be opening more trunks, we're going to be searching more cars and pockets and homes, and here we go again. So what I'm saying is, pay attention, folks. Be woke. And look and see what's going on around you in your communities and what's coming next down the pipe, and be right on it to prevent it from happening. If you want to reduce smoking, do what we've been doing, which has been very effective: education, treatment, embracing our young people and working with our young people not to do it. Yeah, put up all the ads you want on TV and radio, but don't make this a law enforcement issue by any size, shape, or make.
Thank you. I absolutely agree. Raise your hand if you know that prohibition does not work. That's like everybody. Okay, thank you. So newsflash, prohibition is working. It's working just like the government wants it to work. Prohibition is working. Just like with alcohol prohibition and the horrors that it caused, it's working. So what we have to do is educate. Like, you have to talk. You might not be at the Capitol with your face and on the news like me, but you can talk. You can talk to your children. Like, I know a lot of people who think that cannabis is medicine, but they will medicate with me, but they don't want their kids to know about it. Everybody's not me. It's cool. But if you believe in it, how much do you believe in it if you're not willing to talk about it? Talk to your pastors. I'm in Georgia. Who go to church? All right, come on, you can go to church. I'm proud of y'all. I'm proud of y'all.
She gotta go. She's still preaching kid no matter what.
No, you don't go to church. I'm proud of people not going to church. So, yeah.
She didn't have that choice, obviously.
Yeah, I'm always proud when I'm in a room full of people who don't go to church, because then I don't have to deal with that. Talk to your priest, talk to your pastor. Okay, talk to your teachers. But just start the conversation. Prohibition is working because it's working for those who think differently. And unless they know differently, it's just ignorance, and ignorance means you don't know. So the more we talk, the more people will know. And the more you know, the better you are. And the better we all are as a people.
So I don't see him still in the room, but Khalid Kamu from the new city of South Fulton.
He's right there.
Oh, there you go. What are you doing? How am I supposed to call you? Man, you're in another room, hanging out with other people, you know? So Khalid wants to say something very important, and I thought it would be a good idea for everyone to hear it. So Khalid, no, you come up here and face that way and hang out with me because you're better looking.
Hey, I don't know about all that. Yes, my name is Khalid. I'm first Black Lives Matter organizer elected to public office in the country. One of the things that I ran my campaign on coming out of Black Lives Matter was political education. So the next big, and I'm just going to skip to the cut to the chase, the next big marijuana fight, decrim fight in Georgia is going to be in my city, in the city of South Fulton. I'm putting forth the legislation. So I wanted to speak because I need all of your information and all of your information out in the room. And here's why. Here's what makes the city of South Fulton unique, and this is something that I've been saying in every room that I've gone to, is one thing that progressives and the left have to get into their head is that we cannot win without winning the South. And you can't win the South without winning black people.
Right.
And you can't win black people without running black people, or making sure that the leaders of your parties, whether it's the DPG or the DSA or Our Revolution or Progressive Democrats of America, like we need black leadership and then we need black elected officials running, because what we saw in 2008 and 2012 is that we turn out for us. We turn out for y'all too. Actually, African American women are the #1 voting bloc in the United States. And when they vote 95% Democratic. So one of the things that we need to start thinking about is, instead of investing $30 million in a white Republican district on the north side of town, because that's where the party leaders live and they would like to see their neighborhood turn blue, they should actually invest that $30 million on the south side of town, where you already have a Democratic base that is light blue, but we need them to be deep blue, right? And so what I'm going to ask for all of you all to do, so this is what makes South Fulton unique. For those of you all who don't know, you can go to khalidcares.com, you can see a map, and you can find out about these initiatives, but we are the second largest city in the metro area. Atlanta is 132 square miles, we're 106 square miles. From the Chattahoochee River all the way down to Fayetteville, it's over 100,000 residents, and we're 89% African American and working class with a median income $10,000 below the city of Atlanta. So these are the kind of people that these laws affect and that are going to get locked up. So this is a place where we can actually win this fight. We don't have a white Republican contingent on city council that we're fighting against. But what we do have are some uneducated black folks. And so one of the things that happens, one of the reasons that we're not able to pass these laws in black cities and working class cities is because people are really concerned about crime, right? So one of the things people say is, oh, all this stuff you guys are talking about at Netroots is like pie in the sky stuff, but I've got gangs in my community and I've got crime in my community. So one of the things that we have to do is, after we get people elected, is that we have to come back, keep knocking on those doors, and have public education campaigns that extend beyond the election. So I need people to come back and knock on doors. One of the things that we're doing now is putting together what I'm calling the Old National Electoral College. My street is Old National, that's my district. And we're going to have all of these different classes basically to teach people how their government works. So we had on July 25th, we became the first city in Georgia, and one of the first. We gotta go. Okay, so anyway, we just need people to knock on doors. We need people to do this this public education about marijuana laws. And when we get it passed here, this is like the most important thing is, one of the reasons we are not able to sell these ideas statewide or nationwide is because we haven't started at the local level building something where people can see, oh, they passed this and everyone didn't become like meth addicts. So let's do that in the city of South Fulton.
All right.
Now, John, he's such a politician. A good one, though. Don't say that much. Okay, so we got 10 minutes. So what I'd like each one of you to do, please, because again, I know that this issue resonates deep with all of you. It's not just I want to be on a panel today. Give me the pitch. Teach me. I don't know a damn thing about what you're talking about. Tell me why I'm going to change what I think before I leave this room. Start with you, Ty.
Why would you change what you think? Because marijuana is love, and I think that the more you smoke, the calmer you are. You know what I'm saying? It's way more calmer than alcohol. You know?
I'm faking not knowing, by the way. I just want you to know.
No, I just think I think it's great. I think ending prohibition actually, you know, it helps decrease mass incarceration. I think it allows you to get more revenue in your state. It does all those things and more.
Sharon, and your thoughtful look. Or did you just medicate?
Okay, let me say something. That comes out a lot when I'm in ponder mode. People think I'm high. It's like, no, not really.
I didn't say hi, I said medicate.
Medicate, whatever. High, intoxicated, medicated, whatever. Prohibition's killing our society. It's taken an entire generation from us, and if we don't stand up and fix it now, because like in 76, a gentleman named Jimmy Carter from Georgia wanted to decriminalize federally. And we rested on our laurels thinking that he would do what was right. And I don't care what party you're from, I can't wait one day to maybe get up to his close enough to ask him how he feels about not making that move now. What it's done to the whole country. And once we end prohibition, this very failed program that actually is working as intended, as Ebony said, we're going to move on to bigger and better things. We're building a coalition around this plant of love, this plant of understanding, so we can fix all the really tough problems. Because prohibition's obviously failed, and we're on the tipping point now. We've been there for a while, and we're teeter-tottering every single day. And we need more and more people to stand up and elevate our voice. We need more people in the choir. We need every single person, I don't care where you are. If you're standing and paying for your gas, you should be having this conversation with strangers. We can sit here in this room and amongst a lot of people that obviously are on our side and feel really good about it. But this is not going to do a bit of good if you people do not go out and spread the message. So that's my ask.